what's up YouTube? So apart from all the doom and gloom, the game is still being played to some degree, and even though Chris seems to be doubling down on the changes he's making, there are still some players left playing PoE, and we just wanted to go over the top 7 meta builds in Kalandra League because even though the game is turning to be really bad in terms of loot, let's see if GGG was actually able to change up the meta that we so dearly desired. So as you can see here, number 1 is Inquisitor, so we all know what that means. That's your favorite build by the resident Righteous Fire Chieftain or Righteous Fire Master, Pox, and then we have Elementalist, which means Lightning Conduit, Occultist, which is, I don't even know, probably Poisonous Concoction, Deadeye, probably Venom Gyre, Pathfinder, and this one's going to be a surprise later on. I'm not going to tell you who is the Pathfinder, but probably Poisonous Concoction. And Champion and Raider, probably Lightning Strike, right? So let's go straight into it and see what the new meta actually is and if there's any new skills that are worth playing. So first off, we actually have a new skill. So right away, we see that there's probably a huge meta shakeup, right? Lightning Conduit shows up at number 7, and that's why I actually did top 7, because I wanted to showcase some new builds. If I only did the top 5, well, things would be a lot different. There wouldn't be 2 new skills. So that's why I did top 7, so kind of cheating, right? But regardless, let's go see. What is it actually being played on? It's being played on Elementalist and Trickster. And the number 1 items that are being used are Singularity, Barracks Grip, and Valakos Sign are the most popular uniques. And Orb of Storm, Stormbrand, and Hydra Spear are the main skills that we use to proc shock. So the way that Lightning Conduit works, you have to shock the enemies in order to be able to cast a spell to do damage. So that's why people actually end up using Orb of Storms, which is the most popular one. So we go click on Lightning Conduit right away. We do see that 90% are Elementalists. And we just look at a basic profile. Let's see the number 1 guy. So they use Singularity, and Singularity makes it so that 100% increased damage with hits and ailments against hindered enemies, and it has a bunch of flat lightning and cast speed and reduced mana cost of skills. But other than that, pretty normal build. Barracks Grip is used because it does give a lot of flat lightning, and it does let you leech your life against shocked enemies. So it's a very strong item. Valakos Sign is another item. So people are pretty much just using a bunch of uniques that synergizes well because it provides a bunch of damage against shocked enemies. So Lightning Conduit is a new skill. Not really sure how good it is. Personally, in my opinion, Lightning Conduit is kind of subpar, pretty much just because of its playstyle. But in hardcore, I do think it provides enough damage if you farm enough gear. So number 6, we have our beloved skill, and this is the one I'm actually the most excited about, and it is Venom Gyre. It is actually probably top 5, top 4, top 3 at 5% played. It's kind of hard to say which one because you can see all of these are tied. But Venom Gyre is mostly played on Deadeye, and the reason you want to be on Deadeye is because you get the +1 chain and you get the 2 additional projectiles. Otherwise, I would probably be an Ascendant if I wasn't a Deadeye. So the reason being is Deadeye is the only one you can really play early game, and it is pretty nice. So let's see here. Venom Gyre, the number 1 unique use is Mantra of Flames, and then Interrogation, and then Crystallized Omniscience. Now this is actually a really good thing, is because I designed the build so that people didn't have to use a bunch of uniques. I do think that this is very important because in the League Star scenario, you don't want to be buying uniques and have a popular build because the uniques will probably go through the roof, right? So that's why Covenant and other stuff like that is also usually really expensive early on. It's kind of interesting to see how popular Mantra of Flames is, and it is really good, but I'm not really sure exactly how good it is. But I did use it in my build, and I do think a lot of people copied me. This is another chest that I think is a very good item. Shroud of the Lightless is a very strong pseudo 5-link chest or pseudo 6-link chest, and Elemental Penetration is always really high value until you actually get Omni. And it's nice to see that some people actually use Dying Sun, and more people are slowly starting to afford Crystallized Omniscience. So overall, the skill still does not have an MTX, even though it is super popular now. But I do think that they might release a Venom Gyre MTX sometime in the near future. So number 5, we have Spark. Now Spark is a skill that I felt was going to be a fallback for Lightning Conduit, but the biggest problem with Spark versus Lightning Conduit is that Spark is actually played on Inquisitor mostly. And you have 13% on the Assassin. And for people wondering how do you actually play Assassin Spark, pretty much everyone is doing this build, which is Incandescent Heart and Void Batteries and Call of the Brotherhoods and Merlines. And this is pretty much a carry build that has to work with a support. So that's why you see this character has literally 0 defenses, and it's pretty much a glass cannon, and it actually runs no auras really, or damage auras, and it's pretty much meant to carry groups. So it's kind of interesting why people would even play a carry Spark build anymore. And I think it's mostly because everyone got diluted by GGG. No one really knew about the changes and how bad it was going to be for group play. But basically, most popular skills are Call of the Brotherhood at 58%, Annihilating Light, and Void Walker. Now you might be wondering, why are people using Void Walker? And Void Walker is mostly being used for the Pierce. And that is very, very useful, as Spark needs Pierce to have good clear. And it is interesting to know that no one has actually started to build an Aura Stacker. If you go look at right now, there's no champions and there's only one Ascendant. Could this be the only Aura Stacker out there? And no, this is some whack ass build, honestly. But so no Aura Stackers yet, is purely because champion and Aura Stackers kind of got nerfed in the beginning. So next up we have Poisonous Concoction at number 4. And boy oh boy, this skill has seen a resurgence in popularity. And this is pretty much my theory for why skills become popular again. Is because people get tired of playing the skill one league and then they try to skill another league. The last league, Poisonous Concoction, wasn't that popular, but it's also probably because popular skills like Seismic Trap and Skelly Mages have effectively been removed from the game. So for this skill, we have 58% at Pathfinder, 39% on Occultist, and 4% on Trickster. Now, Trickster is an interesting ascendancy, but Trickster is pretty much strong overall, so it could work on a lot of different builds. So the reason behind 58% on Pathfinder is Pathfinder has a much better single target, while Occultist is more well-rounded in terms of map clear because of Profane Bloom. Now the most popular uniques being used on this build are Devouring Diadem, Carcass Jack, and Snakebite. Now something interesting to note is that Carcass Jack is actually mostly used on Occultist because Pathfinder actually gets no AoE on its ascendancy, so that's why you see, what's it called? You see Occultist mainly using Carcass Jack, and I forgot what actually Snakebite does, but Snakebite pretty much gives you damage over time multiplier for poison per frenzy charge, so this is pretty important, and I think it also gives you 60% chance to poison. So super, super strong item, and it is interesting to see that there is actually 3% of people playing Trickster on this. So next up we have Explosive Arrow, and this is another skill that's moved up pretty much in popularity purely because the other skills got nerfed. It's still not that popular as before, and I do think that its playstyle has really scared a lot of people off. Explosive Arrow used to be one of the most popular skills, and also it received a 20% damage nerf. So even after the 20% damage nerf, it is still super, super popular. And 83% are playing it on Elementalist with 14% on Champion. And I'm actually pretty surprised that there's that many people even playing Champion on softcore because Elementalist just does that much more damage. Most popular uniques are Dyadian Dawn, and this is pretty much mandatory because it makes your Ignite deal damage 42% faster. And a Rain of Splinters is necessary for the clear, and then Polaric Devastation allows you to cover the enemies in Ash, which is around like a 20% damage increase. So pretty much all of these uniques are pretty much mandatory for Explosive Arrow, and I do think that Explosive Arrow is still a really, really strong build that is really good for bossy and has pretty good scaling for endgame damage potential if anyone wants to try out this build again. However, people absolutely despise the playstyle, and some people just can't stand using totems. So next up, we have Righteous Fire, and this is actually the skill I expected to be number 1, and I think I actually put up the wrong images, so let's just go straight into using this instead because I didn't update the images. But basically, Righteous Fire is a skill that kind of got nerfed a lot for single target in terms of Fire Trap. So if you ever look over here, Fire Trap is at 5%, and this is because everyone who uses Righteous Fire uses Fire Trap as their single target also. Now, Righteous Fire did get around a 20 to 30% single target damage nerf, and it is pretty big. And as usual, it's all Inquisitors, and even though Tricksters is at 0.5%, and it's only Captain Lance playing it, you try to bait a lot of people with his build, but everyone knows that Trickster is trash and Inquisitor is king, right? So basically, most popular uniques are Legacy of Fury, and this is what I actually made a lot of money on Maven, is these boots. These boots are actually a pretty common drop, and they were selling for 3 to 4 divines early on, making Maven really, really profitable. These pair of boots are really good because they have increased effect of Scorch, and most importantly, they allow you to, to pretty much deal AoE damage for clear, and it's really, really important. And then we also have Conqueror's Efficiency, which pretty much, I'm not really sure why they use this, but they get duration, reduce mana cost of skills, and reservation efficiency. Maybe there's some breakpoint they're trying to reach. But next up, we see there's a shield dilemma in that people don't really know what shield to use. You have Dawnbreaker, which is really, really good for defenses. And then you have Rise of the Phoenix and Aegis Aurora. And Dawnbreaker is super good because you probably run Purity of Fire. And you have 90% fire res. So you have all of this conversion to fire damage. So you take a lot less damage with the shield. I do think later on that Aegis Aurora will be the most popular shield. But right now, Aegis Aurora is probably very, very expensive. I think it was like 9 divines or something like that. And it will only get worse purely because it is so rare now without Magic Find. So number one, of course, and the main reason why I think this is number one is I think there's a lot of different ways to play Lightning Strike and different ascendancies. So number one is Lightning Strike, and you can see here, this build has a lot of different options with our poor Berserker all the way down at 3%. 3%. I guess people just can't press a button, an extra button or two, to deal like 2.5 times more damage. But I do think the main reason why Berserker Lightning Strike is not as popular anymore is purely because I didn't play the build this time around, and everyone who watches me probably switched over to Venom Gyre, and which is why Venom Gyre is actually so popular this time around. And it is crazy for me to note that Venom Gyre at 5% is absurd. Personally to me, because no one even thought that Venom Gyre was even a viable league starter skill, right? So there's actually something very strange going on with Lightning Strike, and that is Pathfinder is number one. I don't really know why Pathfinder is number one. And usually you can tell because you go to YouTube and we can see Pathfinder Lightning Strike. I did remember seeing a video about this. So Pathfinder Lightning Strike right here. And I don't really know. Where is the Pathfinder Lightning Strike video? So I don't really know why this build was so popular, but let's see, this month. But you can see a lot of these builds, popularity is mostly based on, there's Poison Lightning Strike. It's based on content creators who put out guide videos, and that's why Venom Gyre actually got popular, right? So this is actually a Poison Lightning Strike build. So this one was the only one I saw, and it was only 6.1k. So I don't really know what's going on. Oh, maybe this person. Yeah, this person. So some Russian person probably popularized it, maybe. But I don't really know. There's something kind of strange going on. There's probably some other creator I don't really know about that popularized the build. So let me know down in the comments below why Pathfinder Lightning Strike is the most popular. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is Pathfinder Lightning Strike? Well, Pathfinder Lightning Strike is some poison build, and you can actually self-chill yourself, I think, with Ice Fang Orbit, and I'm not sure if they use Winterweave. Yeah, they use Winterweave, so super interesting build. Now the main reason why I don't like this build is because it's poison, and it's also the fact that you have to get this dagger, which is pretty expensive early game, pneumatic dagger, and it usually goes for a couple divines. But this build is pretty good, and you also have Ungo's Harmony. So what it does is it converts your crit multi from Nightblade and you use Perfect Agony in order to scale your dot multi. So this thing makes it so modifiers to crit multi applies to damage over time multi. Now this is pretty similar to Spectral Helix Poison that Jung was playing a while ago and was trying to bait people to play. So it is nice to see because Poison Lightning Strike actually has a lot better clear, and I do think the damage could actually be pretty high once you scale it fully. So it'll be interesting to see if Pathfinder will move up in terms of popularity. Now, Champion is still really popular, and it mainly uses Perseverance and Yoke of Suffering. Raider doesn't actually use Perseverance and uses Lethal Pride and Dark Ray Vector. So you can see here, this is the list of the most popular uniques. And I do think it's interesting that Lightning Strike is just such a solid skill and so many different ways to play it. So overall, what do I think about the meta? The meta is actually kind of different than last league. You no longer see Seismic Trap. You no longer see small summon skeletons and skelly mages. And they've pretty much been removed from the game. Because if you look right here, this is the top 5 from last league. So you have Righteous Fire number 1, Seismic Trap, EA totems, and then summon skeletons. So you can see here, these things pretty much got removed. Explosive Arrow went down because it got nerfed, and Lightning Strike went up pretty much because it didn't get touched. So one other thing to know is that the minion rework has completely destroyed the class early game. So GGG actually destroyed diversity because they actually removed one of the most popular archetypes and replaced it with nothing. Like Summon Raging Spirits is 2%. I don't even see Ray Specters or Summon Carrion Golem. Oh, it's over here. 0.8%. So whatever goal GGG has in store for the minion rework has been a complete disaster in terms of making the skill viable in the early game. Now, I do think the biggest winner in this meta is definitely Venom Gyre, Lightning Conduit, and Pathfinder Poison Lightning Strike. And it really does show that players are pretty much willing to just play anything different that looks fun. They're kind of sick of playing the new builds, so that's why you see Venom Gyre at 5%, Lightning Conduit at 5%, which is pretty good, especially since it's a clunky skill. And then you have Pathfinder Lightning Strike. So Pathfinder Lightning Strike should be like 11 divided by 3. So it should be around like 3 to 4% play rate. But overall, the meta is relatively diverse, but the lack of new skills really illustrates the problem of stagnation, and that most of these builds are the same exact builds as before, like Lightning Strike, Righteous Fire, EA Totem, Poison Concoction, Spark, and Quiz. And I guess Venom Jar is different, but most of the builds are still the same. It remains to be seen if the new uniques will create any new builds, but that's pretty much it, right? We need some new skills, but the meta at least allows for a lot of different builds. Maul of Mischief never really got popular, but I never really expected it to because its playstyle is whack. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Mirrors, Divines, and Mage Bloods than me, and see you next time. Bye!